What is going to be their next move? Catherall bowed his head. As you command. As he rose to leave the war room, the message still glowed faintly on the stone surface. Good luck. It did not feel like mockery. It felt like confirmation. The following morning, Earth received a formal diplomatic communique stating that the Oxaxian Dominion wished to personally congratulate humanity on their designation as Threat Level 11. Grand Strategos Catherall's vessel, a silent sliver of obsidian tech, transitioned into the Sol system with the cold precision that was his hallmark. As the ship banked toward Earth, Catherall stood at the viewport, his ancient parched skin catching the light of the distant sun. He looked at the moon, but the high-resolution tactical maps he had memorized were wrong. It was smaller. The lunar surface looked different, scarred by vast geometric patterns of light and industry that weren't in the Oxaxian Imperial archives. Upon landing, there was no military display. Elias was waiting, the same unassuming human who had greeted Grak, standing in a plaza that felt disturbingly open. They were led to a quiet chamber, but Catherall did not sit. He stood with the unnerving stillness of a predator that had annexed worlds with a whisper. Catherall looked at the human, a 50-year-old man with a tie slightly askew, and felt a flicker of genuine admiration. This man knew an armada was staged at the outer nexus, poised to raise this entire planet within a week, yet he showed no more worry than if he were waiting for a transport. Elias glanced at Catherall, then popped the lid on a small plastic container. Please grab a seat, Grand Strategos, Elias said casually, extending the container toward the ancient Oxaxian. Almond. They're earth-grown. Hard to get the salt balance right, but these are decent. Catherall did not move. We, the Oxaxians, offer our formal congratulations to humanity for this ranking, Catherall began, his voice like the rustle of dry leaves. Our Emperor, Vorgath the Eternal, sends his utmost regards. That's very kind of him, Elias said, gesturing for Catherall to walk with him through the sun-drenched plaza, though I imagine things are a bit stressful back home right now. All that colonial security work must be exhausting for the logistics officers. Catherall stopped. The air around him seemed to chill. Let us set the theater aside, Elias. I am here for your good luck message. I know exactly why the Grand Strategos is here, Elias replied, his tone shifting from polite to clinical. I know your reputation, Catherall. You don't measure conquest in battles, but in supply lines severed. You want to know how we saw a shadow moving in a dark room. Elias turned to face him, his eyes reflecting the cold geometry of the surrounding towers. You increased your purchases of Heliox 9 condensate by 3% across 7 different trade blocks, Elias stated. You moved the payments through development funds to facilitate frontier commerce for an interstellar highway initiative that isn't even ready for the survey phase. Catherall did not flinch. Markets fluctuate. Prudent governance requires redundancy. True, Elias countered softly. But when you requisition military-grade antimatter containment cores through the Ministry of Colonial Resilience, you affect the insurance premiums of every neutral freighter in the sector. We didn't need to spy on your secret war room, Catherall. We just tracked the sudden scarcity of titanium lattice and kinetic penetrator cores. Elias casually tossed an almond into his mouth and chewed once before continuing. The shell corporations you used were registered in neutral systems, but their transaction latencies were off by 6 milliseconds, the exact delay of an Oxaxian Imperial relay. Elias stepped closer, the warmth of the sun-drenched plaza feeling suddenly like the heat of an incinerator. Every clever thing you attempted, the life cycle replacement of munitions, the pandemic preparedness drills that doubled your medical supplies, it all left a trail. You move a block of stone, and the gravity of the market shifts. You prepare for war, and the ledger records the intent. We don't need to hear your secrets when we can read your receipts. Catherall's eyes narrowed, his mind already calculating the sheer scale of the surveillance required to see such minute ripples. You describe a world governed by accountants, but a ledger does not stop a bullet. Paperwork does not defend a capital. Catherall leaned in, his voice a low, dangerous rasp. You know what we are capable of. You know what we have staged at the outer nexus. So tell me, human, what is going to be your move? Tell me what paperwork is going to save you when the fire arrives. Elias took a slow, methodical sip of his coffee, his expression remaining as neutral as a blank spreadsheet. Elias did not answer immediately. He regarded Kethril for a long moment, as though weighing whether the question deserved poetry or arithmetic. "No," he said finally. "Paper cannot stop a bullet." A faint shrug. "But it can prevent the contract that manufactured the ammunition." He turned slightly, gesturing toward the skyline beyond the glass. "It can freeze the line of credit that purchased the rifle. It can delay the shipment of stabilizers. It can reroute the freight that delivers the fuel." His eyes returned to Kethral's. "You're correct. Paper does not stop violence." A pause. "It stops the conditions that make violence possible." Kethral's expression did not shift. Elias leaned back, looking toward the shimmering horizon. "Your armada is staged at the outer skip drive nexus. It's a magnificent piece of engineering, but even the gods of logistics should know that the Ethergate manifold at that specific junction is due for its recalibration. In exactly 10 hours, all transit through that nexus will be paused for a 3-week maintenance cycle." Silence. "Routine recalibration," Elias said. "Perfectly standard." Kethral's voice remained steady. "Maintenance schedules are filed months in advance." "Yes," Elias agreed. "And filed by whom?" He let that hang. "Do you know who holds the primary service contract for Nexus maintenance across conquered space?" Kethrall did not answer. "Do you know how many of the engineers overseeing gravitic lattice integrity are human?" Another pause. "Do you know who the chief operator is at your specific Nexus?" The room felt colder. Elias continued gently. "You understand the risk profile of operating a skip drive Nexus without full lattice stabilization." Kethral's eyes sharpened slightly. "You cannot be suggesting sabotage." "Sabotage is so dramatic," Elias replied, waving a hand dismissively. "I'm talking about safety protocols. Do you know the exact risk of attempting an FTL jump through an unmaintained manifold? The math suggests a 40% chance of molecular decoherence. I doubt your Emperor would appreciate his invincible fleet arriving at Earth as a collection of very quiet, very shiny dust." Kethril felt the weight of the level 11 logic pressing in, but he forced a cold smile, his voice regaining its dry, rhythmic grating. "You play a dangerous game, human. You assume we cannot simply seize the Nexus. You assume our blades cannot force your chief operator to ignore the protocols." Elias didn't look impressed. "You could try, but are you willing to take the risk that it hasn't been sabotaged already?" Elias continued, tone still mild. "Of course there are other Nexuses, but none with sufficient gravitic stability to transit a fleet of that tonnage without months of recalibration." Kethrall stepped closer. "You would not risk destabilizing a transit Nexus," he said. "The economic fallout would affect your own interests." Elias's lips curved faintly. "We don't destabilize infrastructure. We manage it." Silence. "And that's only the first layer," Elias continued. "Every high-end navigation system in the galaxy, including the ones on your flagship, runs on a specific class of quantum bit semiconductors. Humanity holds 64% of the high-grade refinement tier that produces the raw isotopes for those chips. With the right amount of market pressure, the firmware updates for those chips might start experiencing critical errors. A deviation of a few hundredths of a degree at FTL re-entry distances becomes very expensive." Kethral's voice lowered. "You would cripple the galaxy to make a point?" Elias' expression did not change. "No, you would." Another silence. "Pressure," Elias continued calmly, "is not destruction. It's cost." He stepped closer now, matching Kethral's proximity. "Fuel contracts renegotiated. Insurance premiums reassessed. Transit windows delayed. Credit instruments reevaluated." He held Kethral's gaze. "We don't need to fire a shot, Grand Strategos." His voice dropped slightly. "We just need to ensure that every shot you fire costs more than you can afford." Kethrall stood in the silence of the plaza, realizing that the fire he had promised was being extinguished by a rain of technicalities. The dry rustle of his breath hitched. For the first time in centuries, the Grand Strategos felt a variable he couldn't manipulate. "The AI," Kethrall whispered, the words like ash. "The catalyst. It didn't calculate your ships. It calculated your grip." We don't need to be the strongest predator in the jungle, Kethral, Elias said, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly casual tone. Because we own the air the predator breathes. Kethral looked at the empty almond container in Elias's hand. He realized with a sickening jolt that the catalyst hadn't glitched. It had looked at the Oxaxians and seen a species that knew how to kill. It had looked at the humans and seen a species that knew how to make killing obsolete. Kethral held Elias's gaze for a long time. He had come prepared for arrogance, for bluffing, for threats disguised as accounting. What he encountered instead was consistency. The numbers aligned, the procurement anomalies aligned, the maintenance windows aligned. Nothing Elias had said required espionage. It required observation and patience. For the first time since entering the chamber, Kethral felt something shift. Not fear, not yet, but recalibration. The catalyst, he said slowly, did not exaggerate. Elias did not answer. It was not a question. Kethral exhaled once, controlled. You possess leverage disproportionate to your fleet tonnage. Fleet tonnage is inefficient, Elias replied lightly. Silence lingered between them. Then Kethral asked the final thing he needed to know. And if we accept all of this, if we bypass the nexus, absorb the economic damage, and arrive regardless? His eyes did not waver. If we stand in orbit above this world? A pause. What then? Elias regarded him carefully. Then you will see something interesting, he said. He moved toward the window and gestured outward. You noticed the moon, right? For the first time since the conversation began, Elias seemed almost excited. Kethral responded, his posture shifted slightly. It looked different. The archival images you studied are outdated, Elias said. A faint glint of reflected sunlight caught on the horizon. There are 2 lunar bodies now. Kethral's gaze sharpened. The second is artificial. We named it Aegis. No flourish, only a hint of pride. It maintains a synchronous orbit with the natural moon. Most species assume it is a construction array. Another pause. It isn't. Elias' voice remained level. It's a solar siphon. He let that settle. It draws directly from the stellar output of Sol using a method I cannot disclose. No explanation followed. It does not store energy, Elias continued. It converts and discharges. Kethral's voice dropped. A weapon. Yes. How powerful? Elias met his eyes. Enough. The simplicity of the answer carried more weight than a number would have. It is not aimed, Elias added calmly. It calculates. A beat. And it does not miss. Elias offered a small, tired smile. But we don't like using it. The paperwork for siphoning that much stellar mass is a nightmare. But if your fleet somehow manages to bypass the maintenance glitches and the navigation errors, well, the Aegis is already warmed up. Silence pressed in. Outside the glass, civilian transports crossed the skyline. Drones drifted lazily between towers. Children played in the plaza below. Normalcy. Kethral felt the final alignment click into place. Systems. Dependencies. Patience. Redundancy. The catalyst had not ranked aggression. It had ranked inevitability. His chain of thoughts was interrupted by Elias, who stepped back from the window. You asked what paperwork would save us. A faint pause. Paperwork buys time. Time builds moons. Kethral did not respond. For the first time in decades, the grand strategos of the Oxaxian Dominion felt something unfamiliar. Not fear, not defeat, but the recognition of asymmetry. As Kethral turned to leave, he paused. There is one thing I still do not understand, he says evenly. The Emperor's secure line is reserved for Imperial intelligence. How did you find it? Elias shook his head slightly. Would you believe me if I told you we didn't? Kethral remained silent. Elias continued. When your Heliox 9 spike triggered executive risk models, we knew a Tier 1 channel would activate. Leaders always open the same category of doors in a crisis. He met Kethral's gaze. So we transmitted across every classified band in that tier. Silence. You didn't breach the line, Kethral said. No, Elias replied calmly. We just knew when it would be listening. Cathrall gave a single, deliberate nod. Our Emperor sends his regards. As he spoke the words, Grak's warning resurfaced in his mind about humans, removing the variable entirely. For the first time, Cathrall understood the weight of that phrase. He did not ask the question aloud, but it lingered between them. Were the Oxaxians now the variable? He held Elias' gaze. Elias nodded. Give him ours. A brief pause. And Grand Strategos. Cathrall waited. We truly respect the Oxaxian Dominion. Your fleets keep the outer lanes stable, and the galaxy sleeps better knowing your banners patrol the long dark between the stars. Pirate coalitions dissolve at the mere mention of your approach. A measured breath followed. The Conquered functions better with you intact. We consider your strength a vital asset to our shared infrastructure. It would be a loss to the entire galaxy if that changed. Only then did the pressure ease. Slightly. Cathrall inclined his head once more and turned away. Cathrall's vessel descended through the sulphurous skies of Kaltos without ceremony. The summons had already been issued. The seven waited in the buried war chamber once more. The Emperor stood at the head of the stone table. Grak was present. The other five stood rigid, expectant. No one spoke until the chamber sealed. Vorgath's gaze fixed on Cathrall. Well? Cathrall stood in the center of the chamber, his posture unusually heavy. He did not look at the star maps. He looked only at Vorgath. The catalyst did not malfunction, Majesty, Cathrall said, his voice a dry rustle that seemed to sap the warmth from the room. Grak was not fooled by theater. The humans are not an administrative species. They are an environmental one. They do not fight wars. They manage outcomes. He described it without embellishment. The Heliox 9 analysis. The Nexus maintenance window. The navigation substrate leverage. The artificial lunar platform siphoning stellar output. He did not dramatize it. We thought ourselves precise, Cathrall said. Disciplined. Compartmentalized. A pause. To them, it was a flare in the dark. He did not soften it. When he finished, the chamber felt smaller. The Emperor's gaze shifted toward Grak, who remained silent, his eyes fixed on the good luck message still glowing on the stone table. The pride that had fueled the Emperor for months began to liquefy into a cold, clinical dread. Then what is your assessment, Grand Strategos? Vorgath asked, his voice losing its jagged edge. If we cannot strike, what is our move? Cathrall looked at the star map, specifically the Interstellar Highway Initiative they had used as a guise for war. We should do exactly what we told the galaxy we were doing, Cathrall said with a weary, calculated calm. The fleets will complete their routine readiness drills and return to their original sectors. We will continue with the Interstellar Highway Initiative as a genuine exploratory mission. We will modernize our infrastructure as planned. Emperor Vorgath looked at the seven. No argument followed. No objections. None were necessary. Each of them had seen the same equation resolve. The Emperor's claws slowly released their grip on the edge of the stone table. Then it is decided, he said. No one responded. They did not need to. The meeting dissolved without ceremony. Across the galaxy, nothing happened. And that was the point. In the Conquered's index, the numbers remained unchanged. 11. The great audit was truly over, because the apex predator had finally learned what a level 11 threat actually meant.
A nemoj mi to govoriti, samo toliko.
So there I was, floating in the observation deck of the Galactic Coalition warship Triumphant Dawn, sipping what passes for coffee in this corner of the galaxy, when I got the news that would make me question every single one of my 23 years in military intelligence. Earth had sent their soldiers. Now you have to understand something. My name is Vorn, and I am a Keltherai. We are the ones who wrote the manual on interstellar warfare. Literally, the manual Every species in the coalition uses our tactical frameworks, our training protocols, our combat doctrines. We have been fighting wars for 6,000 years while most species were still figuring out which end of a spear to hold. So when the humans applied for coalition membership 3 cycles ago, we did what we always do. We ran the assessments. Physical capabilities, average. Technological advancement, mediocre at best. Military experience, they had been fighting each other for their entire recorded history, which was not exactly a selling point. Their planet was a backwater, their culture was fragmented, and their idea of advanced warfare involved throwing metal projectiles at each other at high velocity. Primitive, quaint, utterly unremarkable. The Council approved their membership because, well, they needed the numbers. The Raxan Horde had been pushing into
Yes,
coalition
please.
space for the past 2 years, and we were losing ground. Not quickly, mind you, but steadily. The Raxans are not subtle. They do not negotiate. They do not take prisoners. They simply consume everything in their path like a plague of mechanized locusts. We needed bodies. Earth had bodies. 4 billion potential recruits, they claimed. The math worked out. What nobody expected was that the humans would actually show up ready to fight. I was assigned to Processing Station Gamma 7, a massive orbital facility where new coalition forces were evaluated, trained, and integrated into existing battle groups. It was supposed to be a 3-month rotation. Easy duty. I would assess the humans, file my reports, and then rotate back to a command position somewhere important. The first transport arrived on schedule. I floated down to the docking bay with my assistant, a young Pelthian named Cree, who had somehow managed to get himself assigned to the most boring job in the fleet. He did not seem thrilled about meeting the humans either. "Sir," Cree said, his translator unit clicking softly. "The manifest shows 200 soldiers in this batch. Should we prepare the standard orientation protocols?" Yes. I waved a tendril dismissively. "Same as always. Show them where the barracks are. Explain the meal schedules. Run them through basic weapons familiarization. You know the routine." The docking clamps engaged with a heavy thud that resonated through the deck plating. The airlock cycled. The door opened, and out walked Lieutenant Commander Jack Stone. Now I had seen plenty of species in my time. Tall ones, short ones. Ones with too many limbs, ones with not enough. But humans? They were just so aggressively average-looking. 2 arms, 2 legs, forward-facing eyes, bipedal locomotion. Stone was tall by their standards, I later learned, standing at roughly 1.9 meters. He had dark skin, darker eyes, and an expression that suggested he had seen things that would make most beings reconsider their life choices. He stopped 3 meters from me, looked around the docking bay with those unsettling predator eyes, and then spoke in perfect galactic standard. "Lieutenant Commander Stone, Earth Special Operations Group. Where do you want us? Not, where should we report? Not, what are our orders? Where do you want us?" Like he was asking where to stack furniture. I blinked all 3 of my primary eyes. "Yes, well, welcome to Processing Station Gamma 7. I am Senior Tactical Analyst Vorn, and this is my assistant Cree. We will be handling your orientation and integration into coalition forces. If you and your soldiers would follow us to the briefing hall, we can begin the standard evaluation process." Stone turned his head slightly, not enough to break eye contact with me, which was mildly disturbing. "Evaluation?" "Yes," I said, trying to maintain my professional demeanor. "All new coalition forces undergo a standardized assessment to determine optimal placement within existing battle groups. It is a routine procedure, nothing to be concerned about." Behind Stone, more humans were filing out of the transport. They moved with a kind of practiced efficiency that seemed almost choreographed. Each one was carrying their own equipment, which was unusual. Most species relied on automated loading systems. These humans apparently preferred to handle their gear personally. Stone did something with his face that I later learned was called a smile. It did not look friendly. "Analyst Vorn," he said, his voice carrying a strange quality I could not quite place. "We already know what we are good at. We are good at killing things. The question is, what things do you need killed?" Cree made a choking sound beside me. I cleared my throat. which in Keltherai sounds like gargling gravel. I appreciate your enthusiasm, Commander. But Coalition military protocol requires that all personnel undergo proper evaluation before receiving combat assignments. It was your own safety as much as anything else. Safety, Stone repeated, like he was tasting the word and finding it unpleasant. Right. Sure. Led the way, analyst. The orientation did not go well. We started with the standard physical capability tests. Humans, according to their own submitted data, were supposed to be average in strength, slightly below average in endurance, and wholly unremarkable in reflexes. The tests were designed to be challenging but manageable for typical Coalition soldiers. The first human up was a woman named Lieutenant Torres. She was shorter than Stone, broader in the shoulders, and had arms that looked like they could bend support struts. Cree explained the test to her. She would need to traverse an obstacle course, while carrying standard Coalition equipment, approximately 40 kilograms of gear, and complete it within the allotted time of 15 minutes. Torres looked at the course. Then she looked at the gear. Then she looked at me. "This is it?" she asked. "Yes," I said slowly. "Is there a problem?" "No problem," she said, picking up the gear pack like it weighed nothing. "Just checking." She completed the course in 6 minutes and 42 seconds, while carrying an additional 20 kilograms of equipment she had brought with her, and she was not even breathing hard. "That was a warm-up, right?" Corse asked, dropping the pack at my feet. "When does the actual test start?" I stared at her. Cree stared at her. The other humans waiting their turn were trying very hard not to laugh. "That," I said carefully, "was the actual test." Torres blinked. "You are messing with me. I assure you, I am not. This is what you use to evaluate combat readiness." "Yes." She turned to look at Stone, who was leaning against a wall with his arms crossed. "Sir, permission to speak freely." "Granted," Stone said, still doing that unsettling not quite smile thing. "We are going to break all their equipment, aren't we?" "Probably," Stone agreed. And that was how I learned that human average was not the same as galactic average. Not even close. The weapons familiarization went even worse, depending on your perspective. We showed them the standard Coalition pulse rifle, a reliable weapon that had been in service for 3 centuries. It fired concentrated energy bolts, had effectively unlimited ammunition thanks to its self-charging power cell, and was accurate to approximately 800 meters. The humans looked at it like we had handed them toys. "No recoil," observed a man named Sergeant Webb, turning the rifle over in his hands. "Interesting. What is the stopping power against armored targets?" I consulted my datapad. The pulse rifle can penetrate standard racks in combat armor at ranges up to 300 meters. What about at 400 meters? The energy dissipation reduces effectiveness significantly. Webb nodded thoughtfully. "So it is a close to mid-range weapon. What do you use for long-range engagements?" "We have specialized marksman rifles for designated shooters," Cree offered helpfully. "They have an effective range of approximately 1,200 meters. 1,200. Webb repeated. He looked at Stone again. That seemed to be a thing they did. Look at Stone whenever reality failed to meet their expectations. "Sir," Stone sighed. It sounded tired. "Show them." Webb reached into his pack and pulled out what I later learned was called a rifle. Not a pulse rifle, just a rifle. It was longer than the Coalition weapon, heavier, and appeared to be constructed from some kind of metal alloy and polymer composite. It looked ancient. It looked crude. It looked terrifying. "This is an M1118 LR, Webb said, his voice taking on the tone of someone explaining something very simple to someone very stupid. 7.62 millimeter. Effective range, approximately 800 meters for a standard shooter. In the right hands, I can hit targets at 1,200 meters consistently. I have made confirmed kills at 1,500. "Kills," I said weakly. "You mean training targets?" "No," Webb said flatly. "I mean kills. People. Well, not people, but you know what I mean. Targets that shot back." I did not know what to say to that. What do you say when someone casually mentions that they have killed other beings at a distance of 1.5 kilometers using primitive ballistic weapons? Cree found his voice first. But those weapons are so inefficient. The ammunition is finite. The maintenance requirements must be substantial, and the recoil would make rapid fire nearly impossible for most species. Most species, Stone said, pushing off from the wall and walking over to us, are not humans. Webb, give the analyst a demonstration. What happened next would appear in my nightmares for months. Webb walked over to the firing range we had set up, a simple affair with holographic targets at various distances. He did something to his rifle, making a series of clicking sounds that seemed very final. Then he raised the weapon to his shoulder, looked through some kind of optical device mounted on top, and waited. The target appeared at 800 meters. The rifle made a sound that I can only describe as thunder compressed into a fraction of a second. The recoil drove Webb back maybe a centimeter. The target exploded. Another target appeared at 900 meters. Thunder. Target destroyed. 1,000 meters. Thunder. Gone. 1,100. Thunder. Obliterated. 1,200 meters. Webb paused, adjusted something on his scope, accounted for factors I could not even begin to calculate. Thunder. The target did not just explode. It vaporized. Holy saints, Cree whispered beside me. Webb lowered his rifle and turned back to us. That is 20 rounds. I am carrying 200. Most of us are, so when you talk about ammunition being finite, you are technically correct, but also practically wrong. Because I guarantee you I can make 200 rounds last longer than your fusion cell. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. Stone took pity on me. Analyst Vorn, I think we need to have a conversation. Somewhere private. Somewhere with very strong alcohol if your species can process it. My species invented alcohol, I said automatically. Good, Stone said, because you are going to need it. We ended up in my office, which was not particularly impressive, but at least had chairs that could accommodate both our physiologies. Stone sat across from my desk, looking entirely too comfortable for someone who had just casually upended my understanding of human capabilities. I poured us both drinks. For me, it was Calthari whiskey, aged for 6 cycles and strong enough to strip paint. For Stone, I offered the same, not knowing what else to give him. He took a sip, did not cough, did not grimace, just nodded appreciatively. Not bad, he said. Burns on the way down, but in a good way. Commander Stone, I began, then stopped, started again. I need you to explain something to me. Your species submitted comprehensive data when applying for coalition membership. Physical capabilities, technological level, military experience. Everything we saw today contradicts that data. Does it? Stone asked mildly. You are stronger than you claimed, faster, more resilient. Your weapons are more effective than anything in our arsenal at comparable ranges. Your soldiers display a level of training and competence that suggests centuries of professional military development. Either your initial data was catastrophically wrong, or you deliberately misrepresented your capabilities. Stone took another sip of whiskey. What do you know about Earth history, analyst? Very little, I admitted. I know you have been fighting wars for a long time. That is an understatement, Stone said. We have been fighting wars for our entire existence as a species. Not just wars. Every kind of war you can think of. Tribal conflicts, territorial disputes, religious crusades, ideological struggles, wars for resources, wars for survival, wars because someone looked at someone else funny. We have fought on every continent, in every climate, using every weapon from sharpened sticks to nuclear weapons. That is... I struggled for words. That is horrifying, yes. Stone agreed simply. It is, but here is the thing, analyst. All that horror, all that violence, it taught us things. It taught us how to kill efficiently, how to survive in any environment, how to adapt to any enemy, how to win when winning should be impossible. And most importantly, it taught us that the species that survives is not the strongest or the smartest. It is the one most willing to do whatever it takes. I felt something cold settle in my stomachs. The data you submitted was accurate? Stone interrupted. For our civilians, for the average human who has never held a weapon, never been in combat, never had to make the choice between killing and dying. You asked for military data, and we gave you civilian averages, because you never asked the right questions. What should we have asked? Stone leaned forward, his eyes locked on mine. You should have asked what our soldiers can do. You should have asked what we have trained for. You should have asked what Earth does with its people who volunteer to walk into hell and drag the devils out kicking and screaming. You should have asked about us, analyst. The ones who wear the uniform not because we have to, but because we are good at it. And what are you good at? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. We are good at war, Stone said. We are very, very good at war. And the Viraxans? They are about to find out exactly what that means. There was a long silence. I drank my whiskey. Stone drank his. Outside my office window, I could see the rest of the human soldiers being processed through various evaluation stations. They were breaking records at every single test. My staff looked increasingly confused and alarmed. The council is not going to like this, I said finally. The council needs us, Stone replied. You said it yourself. The Viraxans are winning. They are pushing into coalition space, destroying colonies, killing billions. You need soldiers who can fight them. Well, congratulations. You just got 200. And there are more coming. A lot more. How many more? Earth has committed to sending 500,000 troops in the first wave, Stone said casually. All volunteers. All trained to the same standards you saw today. And if that is not enough, we can send more. We have 4 billion people, analyst. Not all of them can fight, but enough of them can. Enough of them want to. 500,000. All like these soldiers. All capable of the things I had seen today. The Viraxans were about to have a very bad time. What do you need from us? I asked. 3 things, Stone said, counting on his fingers. First, drop the evaluation nonsense. We know what we can do. Give us targets and let us work. Second, give us access to your intelligence on Viraxan tactics, technology, and territory. We need to know what we are fighting and where to find them. Third, and this is important, stay out of our way. We do not fight like you fight. We do not think like you think. If you try to make us fit into your standard operating procedures, we will be less effective, and you do not want us to be less effective. What happens if we try to command you using standard coalition doctrine? I asked, morbidly curious. Stone's expression did not change, but something in his eyes went very cold. Then a lot of people die who should not have to. Your people, our people, maybe both. We have been fighting wars for 10,000 years, analyst. We know what works. Let us do what we are good at. It was not a request. Not really. It was a statement of fact delivered with the absolute confidence of someone who knew exactly what they were capable of. I made a decision that would either save my career or end it. I will forward your request to command, I said, along with my full assessment of your capabilities and my recommendation that you be given operational autonomy. I cannot promise they will approve it, but I will try. That is all we ask, Stone said, standing up. He offered his hand, another human gesture. I had learned meant something between greeting and agreement. I extended a tendril, and we shook. His grip was firm but not painful, controlled. Like everything else about him, he was at the door when I called out. Commander Stone? One more question? He turned back. Yes? Why did you volunteer? You said everyone in your unit volunteered. Why? What makes someone choose to leave their home planet and fight in a war that is not even yours? Stone was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than before, but no less serious. Because someone has to, he said. Because the Viraxans will not stop with your species. Eventually, they will reach Earth. And when they do, I would rather meet them out here on your territory, where I have allies and support, than on my homeworld where my family lives. We are not doing this for you, analyst. We are doing this for us. You just happen to benefit. Then he was gone, leaving me alone in my office with a half-empty glass of whiskey and the growing certainty that the galaxy had just shifted in ways nobody had anticipated. The Viraxans were coming. They had been winning. But Earth had not sent generals in fancy uniforms who would argue about tactical doctrine and proper protocol. They had sent killers in army suits who knew exactly what they were doing. And may the stars have mercy on anyone who stood in their way, because the humans certainly would not. 3 weeks later, I was standing in the command center of the coalition battleship Resolute Mercy, watching my career die in real time, The holographic display showed 15 Vraxan cruisers bearing down on Colony World Petra 5, a mining planet with approximately 2 million inhabitants who had exactly zero chance of surviving the next 6 hours unless something miraculous happened. The colony defense fleet consisted of 3 outdated frigates that would last maybe 4 minutes against Vraxan firepower. Admiral Kesh, a Thorian with more combat experience than most beings had birthdays, was studying the tactical display with the expression of someone calculating acceptable losses. That expression, if you are wondering, looks remarkably similar across species. It is the look that says we are about to lose a lot of people and there is absolutely nothing we can do about it. Evacuation transports will never make it, Commander Brell said from his station. He was Kelthadori like me, but he had actually seen combat. Multiple twos. The scars on his carapace proved it. The Vraxans will be in firing range before we can evacuate even 10% of the population. Agreed, Keish said, his voice carrying that particular resignation that comes from making impossible choices. Signal the defense fleet to buy as much time as possible. Order the transports to prioritize critical personnel and children. Everyone else, he did not finish. He did not have to. Admiral, I said, surprised by my own voice. Sir, we have human forces in this sector. Their battalion completed integration protocols last week. They are approximately 4 hours away at maximum burn. Kesh turned one of his eye stalks toward me. The other 3 remained focused on the display. Thorians had excellent multitasking capabilities. The humans? Stone's group, yes sir. 200 soldiers. 6 combat transports. Full equipment loadout. 200 soldiers, Kesh repeated slowly. Against 15 Vraxan cruisers, and an estimated 5,000 ground troops. Analyst Vorn, I appreciate your optimism, but those numbers are not encouraging. Sir, I have seen what they can do. I have reviewed their training exercises. I have studied their tactics. They are not like coalition forces. They fight differently. Different does not mean better, Rel interjected. We have protocols. Analyst. Established doctrine that has been tested over thousands of engagements. These humans, no matter how impressive in controlled environments, have never faced actual Vraxan combat units. I wanted to argue. I wanted to explain that everything I had seen in the past 3 weeks suggested that humanity had been preparing for exactly this kind of fight for their entire history. But arguing with a combat veteran about tactical realities when you are an analyst who has never fired a weapon in anger is a losing proposition. Keish made the decision for me. Untack the humans. Inform them of the situation. If Commander Stone believes his forces can make a difference, I will not stop him from trying. But make it clear this is a volunteer mission only. I will not order untested troops into a suicide run. I opened the communication channel, my tendrils moving across the controls faster than I had thought possible. The human transport ship, which they had named Angry Hornet for reasons that made no sense whatsoever, responded immediately. Stone's face appeared on the screen. He looked exactly the same as he had 3 weeks ago. Calm, focused. Dangerous. Analyst Vorn, he said, I am going to guess this is not a social call. Commander, we have a situation. I transmitted the tactical data. Watched his eyes move across his own display, calculating, processing, deciding. It took him maybe 10 seconds. What are the colony defenses? Minimal. 3 frigates, some surface-based anti-air systems, civilian security forces with small arms. Evacuation status? In progress. Insufficient time to complete. So we are looking at approximately 2 million civilians about to be overrun by Vraxan ground forces while their cruisers glass the planet from orbit. Is that an accurate assessment? Yes, I said quietly. Stone was quiet for exactly 3 seconds. Then he turned his head, spoke to someone off screen. Riley, plot intercept course for Petra 5, maximum burn. I do not care if we burn out half the engines. Anderson, get everyone geared up, full combat loadout. Tell Webb to break out the big toys. Torres, I need you to coordinate with the other transports. We are going in hot. He turned back to me. Tell your admiral we will be there in 3 hours and 42 minutes. Tell him to keep those frigates alive as long as possible. We are going to need the distraction. Commander, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. There are 15 Vraxen cruisers. Your orders from command specify that you should avoid engaging enemy capital ships without proper support. Analyst, Stone said, and there was something in his voice that made my spine stiffen. I am going to let you in on a little secret. Humans do not follow orders that result in 2 million civilians dying when we can do something about it. It is not how we are built, so you can tell command that we engaged against orders, or you can tell them we had communication difficulties and acted on our own initiative. Your choice. Either way, we are going in. The transmission ended. I turned back to Admiral Cash, who had been listening to the entire exchange. All 4 of his eye stalks were now focused on me. Did that human just tell us he is going to engage 15 Vraxen cruisers with 6 transports and 200 soldiers? Yes, sir. And he thinks he can win? I believe he thinks he has to try, sir. Whether he can win or not seems secondary to that calculation. Kesh made a sound that might have been a laugh, or might have been a growl. With Thorians it was hard to tell. Either your humans are the bravest beings I have ever encountered, or the most suicidally stupid. I suppose we are about to find out. Rel, dispatch our fastest cruiser to provide support. Tell Captain Vex she has authorization to engage at her discretion. Sir, Rel protested. 1 cruiser against 15 is better than 0 cruisers against 15, Kesh interrupted. And if these humans are actually insane enough to try what I think they are trying, they are going to need someone to cover their escape, assuming any of them survive. 3 hours and 38 minutes later, because apparently humans could shave 4 minutes off an already aggressive timeline, the Angry Hornet and its 5 companion transports dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly into the Petrified system, and all hell, as the humans would say, broke loose. I watched it all from the Resolute Mercy's command center, my 3 stomachs doing things stomachs should not do. The tactical display showed the human transports spreading out in a formation that made no sense according to Tatum doctrine. They should have been grouping up for mutual support. Instead, they were separating, each one burning toward a different sector of space. What are they doing? Brel demanded. That formation leaves them vulnerable to concentrated fire. I do not know, I admitted. Then I opened a direct channel to Stone's ship. Commander, your formation is non-standard. Are you experiencing navigational difficulties? Negative. Stone's voice came back. Tension evident but controlled. We are exactly where we need to be. Watch and learn, analyst. The Vraxen cruisers had detected the human ships. They were already adjusting their formation, diverting 3 cruisers to deal with what they clearly saw as a minor nuisance, before returning to the more important task of destroying the colony. That was their first mistake. The human transports were not transports. Not really. I mean, they were, but humans apparently believed that anything that could move through space should also be able to kill things. Each ship had been retrofitted with weapons that no sane species would put on a vessel that size. Missile pods, railguns, and something the humans called kinetic kill vehicles, which was possibly the most human name for a weapon I had ever heard. The lead transport, Stone's Angry Hornet, fired first. 6 missiles streaked across the void, leaving trails of superheated plasma. But these were not standard coalition missiles. These were human weapons, and they moved fast, faster than anything I had seen before. The Vraxen point defense systems tried to engage, managed to destroy 2 of the missiles. The other 4 hit the lead Vraxen cruiser dead center. The explosion was visible even at this range. Not just damage, not just a breach. The entire forward section of the cruiser simply ceased to exist, vaporized by the concentrated fury of human engineering. Holy saints, preserve us, Rel whispered. The other human transports opened fire. More missiles. Railgun rounds moving at a significant percentage of light speed. And then something new. Something I had not seen in any of their equipment manifests. Kinetic kill vehicles. Solid chunks of dense metal, accelerated to absolutely ridiculous velocities, with no warheads, no fancy technology. Just mass and speed and physics. Doing what physics does when you throw enough energy at a problem. 3 more Vraxen cruisers took catastrophic damage in the first 30 seconds of engagement. They are not fighting like transports, Commander Brel said, his voice carrying a mix of awe and horror. They are fighting like destroyers. No, like attack frigates. They are using hit-and-run tactics, concentrating fire, exploiting targeting delays. They are using wolf-pack tactics. Admiral Kesh corrected, his eye stalks tracking the human ships as they weaved through the Raxan formation. Ancient human naval doctrine, used on Earth's oceans centuries ago. Multiple small vessels attacking larger ships using speed, coordination, and overwhelming firepower at close range. But that doctrine was for water vessels. I protested. How does it translate to space combat? Apparently, Kesh said dryly. Very well, the Vraxans were adapting. The remaining 11 cruisers had abandoned their attack on the colony and were now focusing entirely on the human transports. They were firing everything they had: plasma cannons, fusion torpedoes, particle beams, and the humans were dodging. I am not talking about minor course corrections. I am talking about full-burn maneuvers that should have liquefied everyone inside those ships from the acceleration forces. The angry Hornet pulled a turn that put it through a debris field, using the wreckage of the Raxan cruiser they had destroyed as cover while lining up another shot. Impossible, Rel breathed. The G-forces from that maneuver should have killed everyone on board. Human ships have something they call inertial dampeners, I said, remembering Stone's technical briefing, and their pilots undergo training in something called high-G maneuvers. They can withstand acceleration forces that would kill most species. How much force? I checked my notes. Their pilots regularly train at 9 times their planet's gravity. Some can handle up to 12 Gs for short periods. Brel turned to stare at me with all 3 of his primary eyes. 12. Analyst. 6 Gs is enough to cause most species to lose consciousness. 12 would rupture organs. Human organs are apparently more resilient than ours, I said weakly. On the display, another Raxan cruiser died. Then another. The humans were not just surviving, they were winning. But the Vraxans had numbers, and they were getting smarter. 3 cruisers broke off from the main group and began targeting the colony directly, calculating that the humans would have to choose between protecting the planet or continuing their attack. It should have worked. It was sound tactical thinking. Force your enemy to divide their attention, exploit the opening. They are targeting the colony, I said urgently. The humans will have to break off their attack to intercept. No, Admiral Keck said quietly. Watch. The human transports did not break off. Instead, 3 of them, including the angry Hornet, accelerated directly toward the planet on an intercept course that defied every rule of proper combat spacing. The other 3 transports pressed their attack on the remaining Vraxan cruisers, buying time. They are splitting their forces, Brel said. Against a larger enemy. That is suicide. Or it is confidence, Kesh countered. The 3 human ships racing toward Petra 5 were not slowing down. They were accelerating, burning their engines at what had to be maximum output, probably beyond safe operational limits. The 3 Victraxan cruisers targeting the colony opened fire, thinking they had easy targets. The humans did something I had never seen before. They split up, each transport taking a different vector. Then they fired every single weapon they had simultaneously, while still at maximum acceleration. Missiles, railguns, kinetic kill vehicles, everything. It was not precision fire. It was not coordinated. It was overwhelming force delivered with absolute prejudice. 2 of the Raxan cruisers took enough damage to disable their weapon systems. The 3rd managed to fire one last salvo at the colony before a kinetic kill vehicle punched through its bridge and kept going. The chunk of metal traveling so fast it went clean through the entire ship and out the other side. Splash 3, Stone's voice came over the comm, calm as if he had just completed a training exercise. All transports, reform on the
Debilana,
Hornet. We
običná,
are going
bog
to
te
finish
mazu.
this. The remaining 5 Raxan cruisers were in full retreat mode now, trying to establish distance so they could jump to faster than light travel. They had gone from 15 cruisers confident of an easy victory to 5 cruisers running for their lives in less than 20 minutes. The humans were not inclined to let them run. This is Angry Hornet to Coalition forces, Stone transmitted. We are in pursuit of remaining hostiles. If you have ships that can keep up, now would be a good time to join the party. Captain Vex's cruiser, the Relentless Tide, had finally arrived in system. She did not wait for orders. Her ship fell in behind the human transports, adding her firepower to theirs. The Vraxan cruisers did not make it to jump distance. The humans made sure of that. When the engagement finally ended, 47 minutes after it had begun, there were 15 pieces of scrap metal that used to be Vraxan cruisers, 6 human transports with various degrees of damage but all still operational, and 1 coalition cruiser that had barely fired a shot because the humans had finished everything before Vex could get into proper firing position. And on Petra 5, 2 million colonists who were still alive because 200 humans had decided that orders were more like suggestions when civilians were in danger. I was still staring at the tactical display when Admiral Kashyap spoke. "Get me Commander Stone. Now." I opened the channel with trembling tendrils. Stone appeared on screen. His uniform was disheveled. There was a cut above his left eye that was bleeding, and he looked absolutely exhausted. "Commander," Kes said, his voice carrying a weight I had rarely heard. "Report, 15 Vraxan cruisers destroyed," Stone said. "0 casualties on our side. 3 transports took moderate damage. We'll need repairs before next deployment. Colony is secure. Ground invasion force never made it to the surface because their cruisers are debris. I am calling that a win, sir. You engaged against direct orders to avoid capital ship combat without proper support." "Yes, sir. I did. You risked your entire command on a mission that by all tactical assessments should have been impossible." "Yes, sir, but it was not impossible. It was just difficult." There was a long silence. Admiral Kaskai's eye stalks were all focused on Stone now. Finally, he spoke. "You humans are absolutely insane. Do you know that?" Stone actually smiled. It was tired, but genuine. "Yes, sir. We have been told that before. Usually right before we do something everyone else thinks is impossible." "How many Vraxans made it to escape pods?" "Unknown, sir. We were focused on the cruisers, not individual life signs. Probably a few hundred, maybe 1,000. They are your prisoners to process." Kesh made that sound again. Definitely a laugh this time. "The Commander Stone, I am officially lodging a complaint about your complete disregard for proper military protocol, your flagrant violation of engagement orders, and your reckless endangerment of coalition assets. That complaint will be in your permanent record." Stone's expression did not change. "Understood, sir. I am also officially commending you and your entire unit for the most balls-to-the-wall insane display of combat effectiveness I have seen in 40 years of military service. Well done, Commander. Get your people some rest. Something tells me we are going to need you again soon." The transmission ended. The command center was absolutely silent. Then Commander Brell started laughing. It was a wheezing, clicking sound that Kaltherai make when something is so absurd we cannot process it any other way. "They did it," he said between laughs. 200 humans in transports just destroyed 15 Vraxan cruisers. We are going to lose this war. Not because the Vraxans are too strong, but because nobody is going to believe the reports." Admiral Kesh turned to me. "Analyst Vorn, I want a full tactical breakdown of everything we just witnessed. Every maneuver, every weapon system, every bit of combat doctrine the humans employed. And I want it distributed to every coalition military commander within 3 days." "Sir," I said. "With respect, most commanders are not going to believe this really happened. The combat footage alone will seem like fabrication. Then we will send the humans to show them in person," Kesh replied. "How many more troops is Earth sending?" I consulted my datapad, though I already knew the answer. 500,000 in the first wave, sir. They are staging now. Ready to deploy within the month. 500,000, Kesh repeated softly. All trained like
Ja
stone
ne
steel.
razumijem, ove
According to their
debila ne
reports,
znati
yes,
šta
sir.
rade ovi
Some are
debilčine.
even more specialized. They have units that focus on different types of combat. Close quarters, long range, aerospace, amphibious assault. Something they call special operations that makes what we just saw look tame. Kesh was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, and his voice carried something I had not heard before. "Hope. The Vraxans have been winning because they are relentless, because they do not stop, because they do not negotiate or retreat. They just keep coming. For 2 years we have been losing ground because we could not match their aggression. But these humans, they are not trying to match the Vraxan. They are trying to exceed them." "Sir," I asked, "do you know what the difference is between coalition forces and human forces?" Analyst: "No, sir. We fight
Opet
wars
pušiona
because we have
znači,
to.
ne da se i
Because
gotovo.
defending
Ćao
our
zdravo.
territory and our people is necessary. We follow protocols and doctrines because they minimize casualties and maximize effectiveness. We are good at war because we have studied it, and the humans. Kesh turned all four of his eye stalks to me. The humans fight wars because they are good at it. Because somewhere in their evolution, something went horribly right. They do not just study war. They live it. It is in their bones, in their blood. And most terrifying of all, they do it to each other. Everything they showed us
Bravo,
today,
bravo,
every
znači.
tactic, every weapon,
Bravo.
every maneuver, they perfected by fighting themselves for thousands of years. Now they are pointing all that expertise at the Vraxans. The Vraxans do not know what is coming, I said quietly. No, Kesh agreed. They do not. And by the time they figure it out, it will be too late.
Moglo je to
The
da bude
humans
i
are not here
prošli
to help
put.
us win this war. Analyst. They are here to finish it. He was right. Of course. Over the next 6 months, human forces deployed across coalition space. 500,000 troops became 1 million, then 2 million. Each unit performed exactly as Stone's people had. Better. The Vaxans adapted. They always did. But for every adaptation, the humans had a
Ma
counter.
jabalan,
The Vaxans
debilana
started using
obična,
heavier
debilna.
armor. The humans brought bigger
Retardi
guns.
obični, Bog te
The
mazo.
Vaxans tried orbital bombardment.
Na
The
sredini se
humans
mora
developed
čuvati Bog te
aerospace
jebu da se
fighters
ne
that could
popnu
operate
ljudi,
in
neće niko da
atmosphere
se
and
popne.
space. The Vaxans went underground. The humans went in after them. It was not a fair fight. Not because the Vaxans were weak. They were not. They were terrifying opponents who had conquered a dozen species before encountering the coalition, but they had never encountered humans before. The war turned, slowly at first, then faster. Territories that had been lost were reclaimed. Colonies that had been destroyed were avenged. The Raxan horde, which had seemed unstoppable, suddenly found itself being pushed back.